Fast. Welcome everyone to my chess channel, where I share exciting and high-quality chess videos. Today I would like to share with you a thrilling game, a mind-blowing battle between two world-famous masters. Alexander Shimanov playing white, moving first, and Carissa Shiwen-Yip playing black, defending with the queen's side. Please enjoy the game. Now, Shimanov kicks off like a battle cry. White pawn to d4, charging the center boldly, a flag planted in enemy ground, loud and unapologetic, daring black to reply. Carissa answers with a jump. Black knight to f6, the horse eyes the pawn, ready to harass the center. A smirk and steel, I'll be your spoiler. That. White pushes another spear, pawn to c4, doubling pressure in the center. Two pawns now like twin sentries daring black to try and oust them. Black plays slyly. Pawn to g6. A quiet fianchetto setup, like a sniper digging in, preparing the dark squared bishop to rain trouble down the long diagonal. White brings reinforcements. Knight to c3, developing with attitude, eyes on df5 and e4. The cavalry arrives where it matters most, flexing its reach. Black slams the center. Pawn to d5, thrusting forward to clash. It's a direct in-your-face strike that says, we settle this now, steel on steel. White shores up, pawn to e3, solid and sensible. Opens a line for the bishop, and keeps that central pawn structure breathing, not collapsing under pressure. Black fianchetto completes. Bishop to g7, that long-range piece takes position like an archer on a tower, aiming venom down the diagonal at White's heart. White gets cheeky. Queen to b3, prowling toward Black's queenside pawns and hinting at tactical opportunities, bold, showy, and a little bit provocative. Black retaliates with a bite. Pawn from d5 captures, pawn on c4. The center pawn gobbles the c-pawn, a small but telling material swing, and the fight gets tangible. White snaps back immediately. Bishop from f1 captures that pawn on c4. Bishop eats the intruder clean, reclaiming material and snarling, not on my watch. Wanyan. Black secures king safety. Castle's kingside, king to gate, rook to fight, tidy, safe, but the rook's eyeing the center like a warship lining up its guns. White continues tidy development. Knight to f3, the other knight hops out, eyes fixed on f5. Classic building, one piece at a time, heart pumping for mid-game fireworks. Black counters with tempo. Knight to chicks developing and nudging at e5. The board feels like it's tightening into a vice. Both sides smell conflict now. White leaps into the fray. Knight to f5. The knight storms into the center aggressively. A bold probe, like a scouting party dared to bite into enemy lines. Black answers with steel. Knight from chicks captures that knight on f5, a clean removal. Material swings and the center shudders as one threat is snuffed out. White retaliates fiercely. Pawn from d4 captures that knight on f5. The pawn bites back and becomes a living spear in the center, suddenly dangerous and stubborn. Black repositions. Knight from f6 to d7. The surviving knight slides back to regroup, eyes on c5 and f5, maneuvering like a commander conserving forces. White gets tactical and spicy. Bishop from c4 captures pawn on f7, giving check. Bishop plunges to f7, snatching a pawn and ringing the king's doorbell with a grin. Black tucks away. King to height, the monarch sidesteps the check into a slightly safer pocket. A nervous little shuffle under the smoke of battle. White's bishop keeps hunting. Bishop to d5, that same bishop from 7 retreats to d5, still menacing, still in the mix. A predator refusing to go home. Black plugs and prepares. Pawn from 7 to chicks, a modest pawn step that blunts the bishop's prowling and builds a foothold for counterplay on the queen side. White centralizes with purpose. Bishop to e4. The bishop lands on e4 like a spear planted in enemy soil, aiming, pressing, whispering tactical possibilities. Black's knight storms in. Knight from 7 to c5, the horse hops to c5, threatening that e4 square and looking to fork or pounce, tense and opportunistic. White queen slides up, queen to c4. The queen takes a commanding square, eyes everywhere, coordinating with minor pieces, smelling tactics, ready to pounce. Black answers with pawn armor, pawn from b7 to b6, a protective, slightly ugly move. It quiets some squares and prepares to challenge White's lofty queen. White expands on the flank. Pawn from b2 to b4, the b-pawn storms forward, an audacious territorial grab on the queen side, crafting open lines and mess. Black prods with bishop, bishop from c8 to a6, that bishop hops to a6 targeting the queen in the light squares, a sly pinch that complicates White's coordination. White queen ducks. Queen to d4, the queen retreats centrally, still combative, still watching everything, refusing to be bullied off the active squares. Black strikes brutally. Knight from c5 captures the bishop on e4. The knight gobbles White's bishop on a4. Material changes, tension spikes. The battlefield tilts toward chaos. White responds sharply. Knight from e4 recaptures on e4. The horse slashes back, retaking the square like a warrior reclaiming his fallen brother's banner. Balance restored, but tension remains high. Black queen lunges. Queen to 7, the dark lady plants herself on 7, eyeing the center and sharpening her claws for tactics. Her gaze burns holes through White's position. White pushes forward. Pawn to f4. The f-pawn storms up like a berserker, supporting the knight and hinting at a rolling attack. White's courage is clear, fists raised. Black rook joins the fray. Rook from fight to date, sliding over with menace. The rook bears down on the open file. A cannon now aimed at the heart of White's army. White queen sneaks sideways. Queen to c3, the queen slides back a step, regrouping, still prowling, waiting for her chance to strike when the smoke clears. Black answers confidently. Queen to 7, reconnecting rooks, defending and saying with a smirk, "Your queens dance, won't unsettle me." White knight leaps with ambition. Knight from c4 to f2, stepping back oddly, preparing mischief and waiting for a better stage to strike. The knight eyes future outposts like a trickster. Black queen darts forward. Queen to d5, striding like a blade into White's territory. The queen clamps central lines and snarls at pawns and pieces alike. White rook swings. Rook from a1 to gone. Rook to the king side like a siege tower wheeled into place, threatening to storm down the g-file when fire rains. Black queen sidesteps. Queen to b5, shifting her weight, pointing toward the queen side like a predator circling to the flank, searching for loose prey. White rook lifts. Rook from a1 to d2, another siege tower rolls up, preparing to double and contest the file. The board creaks under the gathering weapons. Black rook doubles. Rook from a8 to d7. The rooks now line up like twin cannons, ready to blast through the d-file if white isn't careful. White pawn nudges. Pawn from a2 to a4, a little shove on the queen side, testing the waters like tossing a stone into enemy trenches. Black queen glides. Queen to c4, drilling deep into white's side, eyes sparkling with tactical threats, whispering, "Every move you make, I'm watching." "No, why day?" White rook climbs. Rook from a3 to a3, repositioning high, like a tower crane, preparing to swing across the board for battle where needed most. Black rook lifts too. Rook from z7 to d to next is sliding forward, tighten grip on the d-file. Black's pressure mounts like an anaconda coiling tighter. White rook rushes over. Rook from a3 to c3. The tower swings to the c-file, defying black's queen, preparing to block her advance. Black queen jabs. Queen to e6. A centralizing thrust, lining up checks and pressure. A dagger gleaming in the board's torchlight. White queen responds. Queen to c2, retreating but stubborn, eyeing files and pawns, not giving up her role as commander of the white army. Black pawn drives. Pawn from chicks to c5, crashing forward, a battering ram busting lines, supporting the queen's domination of the field. White pushes back. Pawn from b2 to b3, strengthening c4 squares, a defensive brace to hold the collapsing wall together. White's army digs in. Black pawn crashes. Pawn from b6 to b5, aggressive thrust, doubling down on queenside dominance like siege towers smashing through gates. White rook snatches. Rook from c3, captures pawn on c5. Cannon fires, rook takes the pawn with pride. White claws back material, roaring defiantly. Black queen retaliates instantly. Queen to b6, counterattacking, glaring at c5 and white's king like a hunter drawing the bowstring tight. White knight retreats. Knight from f2 to h3, an odd but scrappy move. The horse pulls back, but maybe it dreams of f4 or g5, a hidden ambush in the making. Black queen lashes out. Queen into b4e, check. The queen spits fire with a check, slicing into white's defenses like a sudden cannon blast. White queen blocks bravely. Queen to c3, interposing her body between fire and king. The queen throws herself into harm's way, dripping with defiance. Black queen devours. Queen captures queen on a4 like a guillotine. The dark lady severs her rival and crows, leaving white without its commander. White king steps. King to f2, walking out into the battlefield, exposed, desperate, a general now without his queen, sweat on his brow. Black queen checks again. Queen to a1, relentless. The black queen chases white's naked king, like a hawk hunting a rabbit across open fields. White queen blocks with grit. Queen to c2, the last defender steps in front of the check, like a battered shield raised against the storm, holding on by sheer willpower. Black rook storms in. Rook from c7 to d2. The cannon crashes onto the second rank, crushing through white's defenses, and the battlefield quakes with dread. White bishop sacrifices itself. Bishop captures rook on d2. The loyal bishop throws its life into the fire, desperately buying a moment of breathing space. Black rook avenges. Rook captures bishop on d2. The exchange completes with brutal efficiency. Black's rooks now dominate, while white's army bleeds. White queen fights back. Queen captures rook on d2, snatching the invader off the board, a fierce counter, but costly with danger still looming. Black queen slashes. Queen captures queen on d2. A merciless execution. White's last royal defender falls, leaving the king naked on the scorched field. White king flees. King to f3, staggering forward into no man's land, a lone commander with no shield, hunted and vulnerable. Black bishop joins the hunt. Bishop to e1, slicing across the board with a check, tighten the noose like a blade at the throat. White king stumbles. King to f2, running back, trying to dodge arrows, but the walls are closing in with no safe haven. Black bishop stalks. Bishop to f5e, delivering another cut, relentless like a predator toying with prey. White king slides. King to g3. Exhausted but still clinging to hope, the monarch shuffles into the open night where danger only grows. Black queen pounces. Queen captures pawn on e3, a vicious check and a meal in one bite. Black's queen sharpens her teeth on white's flesh. White king crawls further. King to h4, stumbling into the corner, running from blow to blow, each step more desperate than the last. Black queen swings again. Queen captures pawn on c5, gobbling yet another piece, her appetite endless. White's position is crumbling into dust. White rook rushes in. Rook to bone, clinging to counterplay. The tower aims at black's queen like one last defiant cannon shot. Black queen calmly retreats. Queen to sate, stepping back with elegance, still commanding the board like a monarch surveying conquered lands. White knight lunges. Knight to f2, coming back into play, but it feels like too little too late. A tired soldier charging against an empire. Black bishop tightens. Bishop to h6, creeping into position, casting a shadow of death over white's last hopes. White rook advances. Rook to b4. Tower slides forward to bite at black's queen and pawns. A desperate last punch in a losing fight. Black queen checks again. Queen to c5. Another hammer blow, forcing white's king to keep dancing on the edge of disaster. White rook shields. Rook to b8, defiant, throwing in a check as if shouting, "If I go down, I'm taking you with me." No. Black king steps calmly. King to g7, unshaken, walking out of checks like a giant brushing off arrows. White knight scrambles. Knight to f, throwing itself into the fire, hoping to guard the crumbling fortress with whatever strength remains. Black queen skewers. Queen to e3, laser-focused, threatening doom from every angle. A dark net wrapping around white's king. White pawn thrusts. Pawn to g3. A little soldier steps up, trying to cover squares, a hopeless bandage on a mortal wound. Black queen bites. Queen captures pawn on f, swallowing another defender, stripping white of every ounce of protection. White rook lifts. Rook to 8, stubbornly trying to fight back, but the tower stands alone against overwhelming forces. Black queen sneers. Queen to 5, repositioning with elegance, all lines still covered. The final tightening of the noose. White pawn shuffles. Pawn to h3, one last gasp. A pawn's lonely march, but nothing will save this broken army. Black pawn strikes. Pawn to g5, the final hammer drop, a vicious thrust with check, and Shimanov's white army collapses. Carissa Yip seizes total victory, 0-1. A brutal, fiery end, the board left littered with fallen pieces, White's king hunted into despair, and Black standing tall like a conqueror on the smoking battlefield. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.